Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Ferera Swan. Looking forward to our conversation today, Ferera.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So today we're going to talk about healing as we do on Thriving Adoptees, and just want to signpost to a great interview on adoptees on. So Hayley interviewing Ferera on her story, which is like about 3 years or so ago. So I've been listening to that this morning. It's great interview. People are interested in Ferrera's story. Check that out. Today we're going to be talking about healing. So, what does healing mean to you, Ferera?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is, I think healing for me is the practice of being completely honest with myself about my feelings, about, not, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to say there's so much. I think healing is about honesty, really, for me, being honest with myself about my pain, about the grief that I carry, about being honest about the fact that it may never go away fully, and that it may be something that I learn to, I don't want to say deal with, but rather, sit with, reflect on, and obviously it ebbs and flows, not something to get rid of, I guess. That's what I think healing means to me. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. So if you don't know, listeners, Ferera is she's a singer-songwriter, recording artist. You describe yourself as a recording artist, songwriter, composer, pianist, violinist, member of Women in Music in Grammy voting memory of the member of the Recording Academy. It's a bit of a mouthful. One of the things that it says on your website is that you've channeled your trauma into a creative and personal rebirth. And then you go on to say some of our greatest gifts can be found in our deepest pain. Explore what hurts and find yourself.
Yeah.
And the bit that really intrigued me was explore the pain and find yourself, because I was intrigued because I could take, there's a number of different ways that could be taken, right? So what do you mean by that? What do you mean?
So where I was coming from was speaking from my lived experience in exploring my own pain, having the courage to look deeply into it and sitting with it, being curious about it. In that process, I was able to get to know myself. I was able to find myself, know myself, and ultimately love myself, which was something that I had never experienced before I ever allowed myself to feel the pain. I hope that makes sense, but
I think so.
I had spent so many years. I guess I have to add that, in our society, here in America, there's a lot of what the term is toxic positivity is what, how I understand it. We, just put it behind you. Like, don't look back, let go. And while those kinds of phrases can be helpful in many situations, I agree. But I think when it comes to trauma, especially adoptee trauma, I think those kinds of phrases can potentially be harmful because it prevents us from going where we need to go internally. The stuff that really hurts, the stuff that I think many people try to avoid, of course, because nobody wants to feel the heartbreak and grief, and but it's there underneath. And so for me, a lot of it was manifesting itself in my relationships, my friendships, even, just, and I was just so kind of unaware. And it wasn't until, like I said, I was able to explore that pain that I was able to get really honest, really raw, vulnerable, and kind of build back up from the bottom. I mean, do all of that. Sorry, my puppy's running around.
This is real life, ladies.
Yeah, she's cute. But I think that's what it was like for me. I think it's a really painful process that I don't think a lot of people really want to go through. And many people don't. I think many people, probably most people, I don't know, I could be wrong, but many people I know do go through life never going there and just sort of operating out of their trauma, pain, whatever it may be. And and that's not a way for me for me personally, it was like, I think I've mentioned on podcasts before that, and I've written about this publicly, I've struggled with suicide ideation in my life from a very young age. And I think when I finally was able to explore that pain and got to the season of my life and emotional maturity, etc., where I was able to do that, I felt like I had no other choice. It was either do that or just end things. But of course I don't think, for me, I never really wanted to go away. It's not, so, but yeah, healing is ongoing. And I think that's where it started for me. And it evolves, so.
Yeah. What it came across to me as, explore what hurts and find yourself. It was almost to me as if who we are is hidden by our pain. So in the same way as if you like you put you've got I don't know why I'm coming with this strange metaphor here, right? But a pea, like a garden pea, a little green vegetable,
yeah.
You put that on the table, and then you put a tea towel over the pea, right? And then you lift the tea towel is the metaphor for the trauma, and the pea is the metaphor for who we truly are, right? And you lift the tea towel up, and it reveals who we truly are. That's how I understood it.
Yeah. Yes. I love that metaphor. It makes perfect sense. It's sort of like an unveiling.
An unveiling. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's you're a songwriter, so you write, like I'm talking about a tea towel. It's not, can you sing the song about a tea towel, right? Or a pea?
No, I love it. It's a great metaphor. I like, it's a total unveiling, a lifting of the towel, finally allowing ourselves to be ourselves, just be who we are, and like, outwardly, not hidden.
Yeah.
And unseen, which I think so many adoptees can relate to, is the being unseen, hidden.
Yeah.
so for so many different, there's so many different layers.
Different reasons, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, unveiling ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
unveiling ourselves, and in that metaphor, what I'm getting at, and because I thought that's what you were getting at, was a disidentification from trauma, saying we
Yes,
are not
yes.
our
We are
trauma.
not. Exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and you're nodding frantically. You can't tell, obviously, listener, because you're only listening to this. But she's nodding. She's nodding. You're nodding along with me. And there's a freedom there. There's a real freedom there. The other metaphor that came to mind was, as you were talking, was like coming out of the closet.
Yeah.
Coming out of the closet, right?
Coming out of the closet or coming out of the fog is
coming out of the
another,
fog, but coming out of the closet in terms of like showing the world who we truly are. And I know a guy who is, well, I know a few people, and I know a few guys and girls who are gay adoptees, and it strikes me that they're coming out of the closet twice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And two of the guys, especially that I'm thinking about, have had really tricky times because they've got. It's almost to me like trauma is it multiplies. You don't add two traumas together.
Mm-hmm.
You multiply them together, right? So 3 plus 3, right? 3 is the pain. Is the pain of being different. Let's call it pain of being different. Pain of being different, gay. Pain of being different, adopted, right? But it's not 3 plus 3, which is 6. It's 3 times 3, which is 9. So it kind of compounds, and I'm using a mathematical metaphor with somebody that's really into words. So
I think it makes it's so much more complex. I totally can relate to that in my own way, in different ways. Being where it's multi-layered. What's the word I'm looking for? See, now I'm losing my words, but it's marginalized, or
marginalized,
where there's it's multiple
marginalizations,
so it definitely, like you said, compounds. It's a great way to describe that just how big and how, I don't know, how scary it can be to be.
So to put the metaphors together, instead of I just talked about one tea towel, right?
Yeah, now you've got 2.
You're talking about 9 tea towels.
Oh yeah, okay, I said 2. 9 tea towels, yeah. Well, it feels like 100 tea towels.
And it feels like 100 tea towels. So finding ourselves is an unveiling. One of the questions that intrigues me is what hinders our healing. And if I was to tie that into what you said about 5 minutes ago, you talked about a lot of people not going there, going where they need to go, I think was the word that you used, the phrase that you used. So there's a courage. There's a courage to go there. And funnily enough, I had an email from a fellow adoptee this morning, who was saying that she knows that she needs more courage. She knows that a lack of courage in the past has hindered her on her healing journey, and now she's got so far. She knows that the next step on the healing journey is going to require more courage, and she's kind of she's psyching herself up for it, I think, or
Yeah.
she's happy where she's at, right? Um, what do you make of that about being scared, hindering our feeling?
I think, well, for me personally, a fear is has been a real hindrance in my life. Fear of rejection, fear of, like, failing, or fear, mainly, I think mine's been rejection. I think that's not a surprise, but I think the courage, the courage is there. I believe it's there in everyone. I think, I know that for me, it happened when I was in a particular season in my life when I was, it came, or it kind of happened organically, unfolded organically, where the courage, you know, I'm not really sure. That's a tough one.
Yeah. Can I draw something? Can I draw you back to something that you said earlier on, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because there's and maybe I'm a little bit off with my word of courage here. Okay, so
Okay.
let me give you an example, right? So you know that you want to do something, and you've got to psych yourself up. That's how I was kind of expressing it like 2 minutes ago. But
Uh-huh.
but 5 minutes ago, you said something about you didn't have an option. You didn't have an option. So there's two things. Like, we're looking at something and we're thinking, oh, one way we've got to psych ourselves up, and then another way we don't need to. We don't need to. We don't need to psych ourselves up. We don't need to find courage. We we do stuff. We take the next step, because it's not an option for us. You know, I can think of a time where I was frozen with fear, talking to a therapist about the next step in my or about why I had stopped my reunion search, stopped my search. Right, I froze with fear, and then after I froze with fear, I flushed red hot with anger. I'm not going to let this fear hold me back. I had no option.
Mm-hmm.
But both of those feelings were completely involuntary, right? I wasn't trying to psych myself up
Yeah,
or
yeah.
scare the shit out of myself.
The involuntary word, yeah, that you mentioned, involuntary.
It's
That's what I
involuntary.
was trying to get at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So, wow. Yeah, sitting that. What else do you think has hindered your healing, if anything?
Well, I think, there's in the adoptee community, there's been discussion about, among adoptees, how when we share certain parts of our journey, or when we write about it, or, whatever it is, we're also reliving and rehashing, re-experiencing in our bodies those sensations, feelings, the pain. We're reliving it. And I discovered that is true to a certain extent. It is true, because I've experienced it, and I feel like and that's an interesting thing, because it's like, well, how do you know if are you, oh, so I'm sorry, my brain kind of
Okay.
goes all over. There's so many, it's weird. It's like, I want to say five things, like five thoughts come to me at once. And then I'm like, wait, I can't say all of them at the same time. So,
Yeah.
okay. One thing at a time. Okay. I'm sorry, Simon.
It's
I,
okay.
it's cold.
This is puppy stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
she's just a baby. Okay, so what I was trying to get at was the reliving it. And there have been times where I've needed to stop writing about adoption. My social media spaces are the majority of them are, well, they're purely advocacy focused and music focused. And but there have been seasons in my life where I've needed to pause or just stop writing about it altogether. And there's no and focus on other aspects of healing, because I think it's healing to do that, because it's healing for others when they read uh things and that validates their experiences too, when they feel less alone, and not even just less alone, that's kind of like minimizing it, but it's huge, because that's a whole nother topic, I mean, that I could get into about how social media has been a life-saving space for many adoptees. However, yeah, back to the how healing can be hindered is the rehashing, reliving by on one hand. But I think what I've noticed is now I've reached a place where I can write about it and can share experiences, and there's like a almost like a detached, not detached, but there's not an strong emotional charge along with when I post it, or along when I write it. And then, I don't feel drained after I post something, like, wow, I just, where I used to. And it reminds me of like a quote by Joe Dispenza. He says, like, I think it's called like, wisdom is a memory without an emotional charge, or something like that.
yeah,
Anyway,
I think
but yeah, that's what comes to mind. I think, yeah, for hindering, two main things is what I just mentioned, but also not allowing ourselves to be honest about how something just hurts still. Like making peace with the fact that it still hurts, and it's okay that it still hurts. It doesn't need to not hurt in order for you to be healed. I don't believe that healing means that it no longer hurts. Um, because that's what I used to think.
yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm with you, and I would sum it up this way. Um, oh, I had it on the tip of my tongue. It's healing isn't about no hurt. It's about being less hurt by the hurt.
Yes, yes. Oh, wow, you said it better and quicker than I. I'm a very verbal processor, so I probably like, yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to articulate. It's like it's being less hurt by the hurt. Yeah, not not being overcome with it, overcome by it, just taken by it, like where you identify with the trauma, but instead, you witness it in yourself
Yeah,
and just observe it. It's there. I see you. Yes. Like today, wow, my grief is incredibly present today. I'm looking at my birth mother's pictures. I'm looking at my, whatever it may be, my, and then other days, I don't think about, it's not this. So I think healing isn't linear, is a very um important thing to remember too, is like, because not to get frustrated with ourselves when it doesn't look the same, like, like for me, because there were moments where I was like, wow, I thought I was quote unquote over this, or I thought I was, you know, but I think it's not linear, and it's not gonna, but I think there's a gradual less hurt. Like if you were to zoom out of everything and look at it from above, like there's less hurt by the hurt, like exactly like what you said. Yeah.
And back to kind of something that you said that I think is an answer to what hinders our healing is, and that fear. You talked about fear. So you talked about fear of rejection and fear of failure. Did you say failure or something else?
Yeah. Failing. Yeah.
Failure. Failure. I think it's fear of our feelings.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's absolutely true. Fear of how we really feel.
I think you said that, but I just said it a little bit.
I may have.
I
I
think
don't,
I
but
just said it. You the thought came from you. All I did was just perhaps say it in a few less
yeah.
words.
No, I love that. It's like, fear of our feelings. That's so true. And it reminds me of something that when I first started sharing on social media and talking about adoption years ago, it was one of the first things I posted, and it was like when you uh oh oh something of wow, I'm forgetting my own what I said, but it was something about how like it's not when other people can't validate your pain, it's not you that they're not able to validate, it's their own voice that's too painful to hear.
They're scared of their own feelings, not you.
Absolutely. It's like I wish I had I wish I could remember exactly what I said, but it was something about, you know, like for example, when adoptees are talking to somebody or anybody, about trauma, the pain the grief, they don't have to be adopted, or maybe, they could be, but like the very act of somebody being authentic and honest about their pain triggers an untended to part in that person, and they're like, and they can't hear it, they just can't, they feel like they need, okay, we'll fix it, or just do this or just do that. It's very quick to like, well, why don't you just, out of sight out of mind, or put them, and it's not that they're, it's not that they're trying to silence you, it's their own voice that is too painful to hear. There's pain that they have not been honest about with themselves, about themselves.
Okay. So
Sorry,
I can sum that up in three words.
Thank you, Simon.
I think I'm not usually good at this. I'm normally the verbose one, just gabbering on. It's their shit.
There you go. It is their shit. It is. And it's like, I used to be so like, it used to bother me and hurt my feet. Like it used to be hurtful. Like, why can't they just, and then it dawned on me eventually, like, oh, it's not me. This has nothing to do with me or even what I'm saying. It's their shit. It's their untended to parts. It's their unawareness of themselves, their own lack of, whatever it may be. So yeah, that was a big
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I had something that came up for me last year from the other side of this, the other side of that, the other side of that, issue, that conversation, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to about a coach, one of my coaches, about me upsetting somebody, and I wanted them to feel better so I could feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
They weren't accepting my apology. They were staying frustrated, whatever it was, angry, whatever. So they were staying in that stuff. And so I was being selfish. I wanted them to change. I wanted their mood to change. I wanted their feelings to change so that I felt better. It wasn't
Right.
about them feeling better. It was about
Mm.
me feeling better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing about it's their shit is that I did a lot of interviews with adopted parents early on in this podcast, right? Now I don't do much of that. Very little of that. The wisest adoptive parents knew that it was their shit.
Yes.
But a lot of people didn't. They talked about people that didn't, other adoptive parents that didn't know. And so the answer was, and I heard this, actually, I heard this from a therapist who wasn't an adoptee, she wasn't an adoptive parent, but she knew her onions, as we say. And she said, parents call me up and essentially tell me to fix their kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell them, no, you have to fix yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, and that is a whole. I'm summing that up in very black and white language, but this is
Right. Right.
bearing in mind this is a sales conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Therapist is trying to get the client.
Yeah.
The client thinks the problem is with the kid,
Right.
and
Right.
the vendor, the supplier, the expert, the therapist has to persuade the parent that it isn't the kid that needs sorting, it's
Right.
them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But if the parent doesn't realize, doesn't cotton on, if that triggers them, then then they're not going to pay they're going to say, well, you're the therapist, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Right. I know and those parents tend to just want a therapist to validate their position rather than, you know,
Yeah, well, we all want validation.
yeah, yeah. Like agree that the kid is the one with the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing that you were talking about validation earlier on, and to me a sign of your progress, right? A sign of your progress is that you are less. You can. I think you said something like, "I can post now without being re-triggered." So I think that's
Yeah, yeah. And
but
needing less validation.
yeah,
Less and
needing
less
less
of it.
validation
Yeah, over, yeah.
and more detached. Yeah,
Yes, more
that's what it is,
detached.
more detached. So
Yeah.
more arm's length and a
Right.
separation, a disidentification from. And it strikes me is that validation can be a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it can feel great and it can keep us stuck.
Yeah. Yes. And I was just thinking that when you started to say that, I was thinking about how there was a season where validation was needed and a healthy thing to have from fellow adoptees. And it still is. I think it always will be. And where you kind of lean on that more than I do now in my current season.
Yeah.
And there may be a season where I feel like I need some more support in that way. But overall, I would say that I've needed less and less of it. I can put something out there without feeling attached to how it's responded to. And not needing any sort of, not being attached to the outcome
Yeah.
of what comes out.
Yeah. I often think about that from a musical perspective.
I was just gonna say, I feel like, yeah, our brains are going to the same places.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's it's how it's been with my music as well. I feel
Yeah,
like, yeah, I put out I've put out music by other artist names in the past, um, very different style, and just the nature of what I was writing about has just drastically changed. And now, I create, I don't know, for me, I create for me, for myself, and many fellow adoptees can it resonates with
yeah,
many adoptees, or not just adoptees though. I mean, anyone who's experienced any loss or just trauma, pain. I think that's everybody, but but
yeah.
I
It is.
but point is I'm not right. I'm not no longer create for, because I'm also a recovering people pleaser. And I think that goes hand in hand with that, wanting to write or create to please, or to, for, I don't know, to be liked.
Yeah,
And when I stopped doing that, I like my art more. I like myself more. So
yeah. Because I'm I've got a few decades on you, I think, age wise, and my wife takes the
I don't know about that.
okay. Well, we're not going to go there.
No, we're not.
It's rude to ask people's age. I could just ask what year you're adopted in, but I won't do that. It's a sneaky way around. Um, so I was, my wife takes the piss out of me, Mickey out of me, because I'm kind of stuck in the 80s with my music most of the time, right?
Mhm.
And I often, so there's certain bands that I like from the 80s, and the one for some reason that comes to mind is Bruce Hornsby in The Range, right?
Sorry, I'm like freaking. I love Bruce Hornsby. I love Bruce Hornsby, and I mean he's one of my favorites, honestly. He's Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah,
I was not
good,
expecting
good.
to say that, but
Yeah.
anyway,
All
sorry, go ahead
right.
and interrupt.
And he had that massive album, The Way It Is, and that massive single, The Way It Is, and but he's still creating, and
Yeah.
I don't think he has the commercial numbers that he used to have. I don't. I'm assuming that he doesn't. And I have to wonder, how do people like that have had that?
Hmm.
How do they feel when they don't have that anymore? And the one that's coming to mind actually is the songwriter for and singer for Take That, Gary Barlow. And when their star shone very brightly, and then it went out, and then it came back. But when it went out, he had a horrible time. He had a terrible time. After that, he kind of shut himself off for the world. He spiraled down. It really wasn't great for him. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I guess some people cope with it. Everybody copes with it differently, and maybe it depends how far you've, how mature you are before you emotionally before you hit
Mhm.
hit the big time. If it comes out of the flash, then
Yeah.
I really have time to get used to it. I don't know, but you'll know more about that than me. I don't know why I'm talking.
Well, I just keep thinking about Mandolin Rain. It's my favorite Bruce Hornsby song.
Yeah, and they always. I'm gonna. There should. I need to find a Spotify list about that. Right. There's
Mhm.
certain songs from certain artists that are always played. So Mandolin Rain isn't played very often. It's always The Way It Is, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's
if
their.
it's Karma, if it's a Culture Club, it's always Karma Chameleon. It's never the Church of the
Yeah.
Mind, which is my favorite one. And if it's uh, I've forgotten what I was going to say. If it's New Order, it's always Blue Monday, and I love that song, but I've heard it too much. But yeah, so we need to hear the songs that the second songs, the ones that aren't the ones that are played to death. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed with artists in general, the songs that have just really gripped me are really, I really felt put on, had on repeat, are not the ones that are played on the radio, are not the ones that are like the big songs. So yeah. Yeah, that's just what came to
Yeah.
mind. But
Do you know, are you do you like the Killers? Are you a Killers fan? No?
yeah, I've heard of the Killers. Yeah.
You've heard of
Man, yeah.
because their biggest song was their first song that they wrote. Mr.
Yeah.
Brightside was the first song.
Right, Mr.
And
Brightside. Yeah,
how
that's
the hell can you recover
yeah.
from that? I mean, I'm a big Killers fan. I love Killers. That's
That's cool,
one
yeah.
of my non-80s bands. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like early 2000s,
Yeah.
right? 2000, yeah.
And there's another band that I've just discovered we're going to see live next week called The Editors. Have you heard of them? They're a bit like the Killers, sorry.
Okay.
But if you like Bruce Hornsby, I don't know, I'm guessing your taste is pretty wide, is it?
It's very wide. Yeah, I listen to everything except for like really hard metal. I don't do that. And also country. I don't listen to country music.
So
There's nothing wrong with it, but like
nothing wrong.
Texas country is what I'm referring to. I don't listen to Texas country, but classical. I listen to film soundtracks. Everything.
Cool.
So,
And listeners, you've got to listen to. I was listening to Ferera's song "Second Time," which is about secondary rejection from her birth mum. So you got to check out the link to that in the show notes. I was listening to that before and it makes Ferera cry, and it made me cry too. So.
oh, thank you so much for listening. Yeah, that was from I think 2015, I believe, that release. But there are two newer releases. I'm working on another one now, but I'm not trying to rush to put anything out or anything. I just create when it comes. And so, but I really appreciate you listening to
Cool.
to that. It's an older one, but
so back to healing, more specifically. Do any particular specific like healing moments come to mind?
well, I think I've talked about this before, but it happened, one of the healing moments that stands out that I think I've talked about before. I think I might have talked about it with Hayley on Adoptees On, but it was in a therapy session where we were having a conversation about, around my adoption. And it was the moment where she was like, you weren't, I talked about feeling like the ugly duckling in my family, and not growing up in my community of people, other Filipino people. I think people don't realize just how deep that can cut for somebody mentally, psychologically, and emotionally. And in that session, there was a moment where she was like, you weren't my therapist, you weren't the ugly duckling. You were really a swan all along. And I just like lost it. I broke down and cried. Makes me tear up just thinking about it now, but my husband was there, and I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening. It was a really beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And that's how I came up with Swan for my last name, for my artist name. So yeah. Sorry about that.
See, we're afraid of our feelings.
Yeah.
We're embarrassed. by our feelings. We apologize for our feelings.
Yeah, yeah, I know. What could it be like if we didn't feel like we needed to? I mean, yeah, that was
And we've got one of our neighbours she just qualified as a counsellor, and she says you've got to break down to break through.
Yep. That
that's
yeah.
That's where the
lifting the tea towel. You got to break down and
you can be brave enough. Can you lift the tea towel? It sounds like a really crap game show, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is. You can't unsee it. I mean, you can't go back ever.
You can't unsee the pee.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm not sorry I cried.
Me neither. Keep it real. Keep it real, people. Thanks a lot, listeners. We'll speak to you again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.